Okay, hi, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's employer classroom. I will be the speaker for today, and Mei Fang here. So for today's sharing, right, I'll be covering these three focus areas. Okay, first and foremost is knowing your CPF responsibilities. Okay, secondly, what are the common errors on CPF contributions? And thirdly, what is the COVID-19 support for employers? Okay. So for the very first step, right, is like for like especially for new employees yourself, right? The very first step is how do you go about start making CPF contributions? Okay? So for newly registered employers, the very first step I'll encourage you to do is to actually create an account with CPF Easy Pay. So for some of y'all that you who may be with the CPF system for some time, you probably think that it is something new. Actually, it's not. Previously, actually, it was known as CPF e-submit. Okay, so you may be familiar with CPF e-submit, but recently we did a rebranding. So CPF e-submit is now known as CPF Easy Pay. So CPF Easy Pay is basically a free web-based system whereby as an employer or even a HR payroll employee, you log into the system, right? And you key in the salaries of your staff, and then it will actually auto compute the CPF contributions for you. Okay, so you don't have to go through the manual, your own self. You go and calculate like 37% of the salary is how much, that sort of thing. So once you key in the salaries, the CPF contributions will be auto computed. Okay, another good thing about this is that it can be submitted anytime, anywhere. So if let's say you go through the manual process, you probably have to go down to the service center, or you have to make your own way down to like probably AXS machines, things like that to submit. Whereas for CPF Easy Pay, if you want to do it in midnight, after midnight, you can do so as well. Okay, and of course, it's a very secure login access through your SingPass. Okay, and once you submit the CPF contributions in the system, right, the payment can actually be also deducted electronically via direct pay, even PayNow and eNets. Okay. So how do you actually create an account? Okay, so first and foremost is you need your SingPass. Okay, so SingPass, you need a SingPass, and of course your company's unique entity number, your UEN. Okay, and thirdly your email address. So for the email address, do take note that it should be an email address that is regularly checked. So for example, could it be your own direct email address? It shouldn't be like a generic email address where you probably check only like once or even once a week or even once a month, because this email address will be used to send important information to you. Okay, so do take note that the email address used should be the one that is regularly checked. Okay, so once you apply online, right, and it's approved, you'll be notified via email. Okay, and then you will also receive a hard copy containing your CPF submission number, which is CSN, and a direct debit authorization form. Okay, so this direct debit is something like gyro, where just now I mentioned is that once you submit the CPF contribution, right, payment will be deducted. But of course, it's slightly different with gyro is that it's not automatic. It doesn't mean that once you sign up for direct debit, the payment will be automatically deducted every month. It's only when you submit your CPF contribution amount on the system, right, then the payment will be deducted. Okay. So now that you have set up an account, the next step is, of course, knowing and identifying who you should pay CPF contributions to, which is paying to the right employees. Okay. So as a rule, as a guideline, you should contribute CPF for local employees, which includes your Singapore citizens and permanent residents, which means foreigners are not entitled to CPF contributions. Okay, and then job types, so long as they are under permanent, part-time, or even casual basis, and of course those working under contract of service. So before I go into details on like who should receive CPF contributions, let me just test like a little bit of your knowledge. Okay, so I'll be launching another poll. Okay, so do let me know. Okay, who should receive? Who do you think should receive CPF contribution? Okay, so do you think salary? Sorry, can you all see? Okay, so yeah, so let me know. It's a multiple choice, so you can choose more than one. So let me know, do you think salaried company directors receive CPF contribution? Family workers drawing salaries? Singaporean employees working overseas? Or employees on concurrent employment can receive CPF contributions? Okay, so, okay. I think this is a little bit straightforward. I think most of y'all should be able to get the correct answers. Okay, now let's see. Okay, so I'll give you another 3 seconds. 3, 2, and 1, and pull. Okay, right, let's see. Okay, yeah, I think most of y'all got it right. Okay, so yes, salaried company directors do get CPF contribution, followed by family workers drawing salaries and employees on concurrent employment. Okay, now for Singaporean employees working overseas, it's actually not compulsory for them to receive CPF contributions. All right. Okay. So in addition to the profile of the employees that receive CPF contributions, right? In addition to that, other type of staff that should receive CPF contributions are your students, okay, whose employment is self-sourced. So some of you may ask like, oh, I have interns joining my company. Do they get CPF contributions? Okay, so if let's say their training programs are not approved by their institution, so for example, your intern, they write in directly to you. They will probably during their school holidays, right, or their term break, they write into you to say that, oh, I want to work with your company as an intern. So in that case, then you need to pay CPF contribution for them. Okay, and also if let's say you have students, okay, for example, your O level, N level students, and A level students, right? For O and A level, for O and N level students, for example, if let's say they work for you during school term, okay, and A level students after exams, they are entitled to CPF contribution. Okay, and lastly, of course, for NS men, okay, if let's say even if let's say they are like not physically at work, they have fulfilling their national service, they should receive CPF contributions even if let's say they are not in office. Okay. So for those not entitled to CPF contribution, right, will be your partners, your sole proprietors, or self-employed person engaged under contract for service. Okay, so like self-employed, they are not entitled to CPF contribution. Okay, and just now when I mentioned Singapore citizens, Singapore permanent residents, working overseas, they are not entitled to CPF contribution as well, and foreigners as well. Okay. So just now we said that for students that are, let's say they come to you directly to as an intern, they don't get, they get CPF contribution, right? For interns that are employed under the training programs approved by their institutions, they are also not entitled to CPF contribution. So for example, like let's say you work through educational institution like polytechnic, usually there will be placement officers within the schools and work with companies to place the students as interns in the various companies, right? Those interns, they are not entitled to CPF contribution. Okay. And lastly, for students that are working for you during their school holidays, okay, they are also not entitled to CPF contribution. All right. So we actually do receive quite a fair bit of inquiries asking like, whether my part-timer or my working for me, are they entitled to CPF contribution? So here are some examples. Okay. So for example, let's say you have this 17-year-old JC student with of course, Singapore citizen or PR that is working for you during part-time during her school term, let's say in July. Okay, so for this student, right, okay, he or she is entitled to CPF contribution. Okay, so maybe just to give you some reasoning is because for students that are working for you in school term, right, by right, when they are in school term, they are supposed to be studying, we encourage them to be studying. So if let's say they are working and studying for the same time, it's something like additional for them. So we will have to pay CPF contribution for them. Okay. Now for students that are working for you during their school holidays, right? By not contributing to their CPF contribution, it's actually an incentive, okay, for the companies to hire them. Okay, so then the students can also actually take home a higher pay without CPF contributions if let's say they work for you during their school holidays. So just bear in mind that as long as the students is studying, right, by right priority should be studying. If let's say it's working, then CPF contribution is required. Okay. Then another second example is let's say you have this student from Singapore Polytechnic, okay, working for you as an intern under a training program approved by SP. So like just now I mentioned, maybe SP has this like placement officer that work through the HR, and probably they'll assign like this student um, to work for you as an intern in your company. Okay, so for this student, right? Okay, the CPF contributions is not entitled for them. Okay, so if let's say you need to want to know like whether this intern is entitled to CPF contributions or not, do check with the school. Like if let's say the school, say that yes, this is a training program approved by the school, then yes, CPF contribution is not required. Okay. So after you identify, okay, what are the stuff that is required to have CPF contributions, the next step is, of course, knowing when you should make your CPF contribution. Okay, so do take note that it's very important to make your CPF contribution promptly. So do take note that CPF contributions are due on the last day of the calendar month. So like, for example, this case shown is for monthly salary earned in January 2021. The CPF contribution is due on the 31st of January, which is the last day of the calendar month. Okay. So do take note that if let's say you fail to make your CPF contribution by the last day of the month, enforcement action will be taken. Okay. And who failed to pay by 14th of the following month. Okay. And in addition to that, right, you will actually also incur late payment interest at 1.5% per month, starting from the first day after due date. So for example, if let's say you failed to make your CPF contribution on the 31st of Jan, the late payment interest will kick in from 1st February onwards. Okay, so do take note as this is a quite serious offense that we look at. So do make sure that you make your CPF contribution by the last day of the calendar month. Okay. So of course we have our means of detecting, okay, we have a detection system, of course, and of course through industry surveys and employees feedback. So sometimes we do receive like feedback directly from employees, letting us know that their companies are not paying their CPF contribution on time or not paying at all. So that's when we will investigate, and then of course we are able to conduct enforcement under the CPF Act. Okay, so I mean for minor offences there will be compensation of offences. Okay, and then of course if let's say it's more serious cases, will be court fines, and in even more serious cases there might be criminal and civil proceedings. Okay, but of course we understand that sometimes it could be very challenging. So if let's say if you are facing any difficulties in paying a CPF contribution, do drop us a note so that we can see how we can work out a solution for you. Okay. So now you know when you should make your CPF contribution. The next step is making CPF contribution correctly, which means you should know how to calculate things like that. Okay. So this is also another point to note is that actually it's very common to make mistakes when making a CPF contribution. So I'll be sharing like what are the common errors so that you hopefully you will be more aware so that you can avoid making mistakes while making CPF contribution. Okay. So the amount of CPF contribution, right? So while we are calculating the CPF contribution, right, the amount actually depends on the these three factors. All right. Okay. So I'll go through these three factors in details, but they are basically your citizenship, your age, and the total wages per calendar month. Okay. So first and foremost, okay, citizenship of employee. Okay. So do take note that once, let's say for example, for some of your right, your hire foreigners. So if let's say your foreign worker, let's say foreign employee decided to get a PR status, right? Once they get PR status, they will be eligible for entitled to CPF contribution. Okay, so they are payable once they obtain the SPR status. Okay, and um the CPF contribution will kick in from the date indicated on the entry permit issued by ICA. Okay, and because CPF system is it might be very new for your foreign employees, like because this system may not be found in other countries, right? In order to let them have kind of like a transition period, the rates will actually differ for the first and second year. So at the first year, you will notice that it will be at a lower rate that they contribute. Then we increase in second year, and then by the third year, it will be the usual same rate as the Singapore citizens. Okay. So another common inquiry that we receive is that some people will tell us that, oh, actually I didn't know that my staff has Singapore PR. So when by the time they realize it, maybe it's another like 2-3 months or even like maybe a year down the road. So then in that case, right, they actually have to back pay. So we will actually usually we will actually advise you to actually maybe for those foreign employees, right? Maybe every year when you renew their work permit or maybe during their appraisal period, do check in with them to let them know that if they say they have intention of applying for PR, do just ask them, like, you know, if they say they have intention of applying PR or not. Okay, and also remind them that if let's say their PR application is successful, they should inform their HR immediately. Okay, so that, you know, when HR disperse the payment, their salary, right, they can actually start calculating the CPF contribution and make sure that it's given to them from the date that their entry permit is issued by ICA. Okay. So this is an example, okay, of let's say you have a foreign employee who becomes a SPR on 3rd Jan 2021. Okay, so during the first year, right, CPF contributions are payable from 3rd Jan onwards. Okay, then the second year onwards will be from the 1st February 2022, which is the second year rate kicks in. Then the third year rate kicks in from 1st February 2023. Okay. Then the second factor that affects the amount of CPF contributions will be the age of employee. Okay, so do take note that once your employee reach 55, the CPF contribution rates will start to change. Okay, so as you can see, okay, for those 55 and below, like for myself and for probably some of you out there, right, we get 37 total contribution rate of 37% of our wages. Okay, now you realize that from 55 onwards, right, the contribution rate will start to drop. Okay, so do take note that once your employee starts to turn 55, you will need to remember to adjust their contribution rate. Okay. So here's an example of, let's say you have an employee whose 55th birthday was on 20th Jan 2021. Okay. So because the birthday falls in January, right? In January, the wages, the contribution rate is still 37%. Okay? But in February onwards, because in February he's already 55 already, so the contribution rate will be 26% instead. Okay. Okay. So another thing to also take note is that CPF contribution rates for those 55 to 70 will be increased and applied to wages earned from 1st Jan 2022. So actually, this was announced back in 2019 of the change in contribution rates and was supposed to be implemented this year. But due to COVID-19, it was postponed to next year, to kickstart in next year instead. Yeah. So for those who are using CPF Easy Pay, right, actually you don't have to worry. If you are already on CPF Easy Pay, right, next year when let's say you submit the wages on CPF Easy Pay, right, the contribution rates will be automatically calculated according to the new rates. Okay, but for those who are using, like, let's say a third party payroll system, right? Let's say you're using a separate payroll system to calculate your employees' wages and contribution rates, right? You may have to probably start making changes or adjust the rates in the system. Okay, I'm not sure how. Maybe some of the system may be a bit more complicated and may need some time to be adjusted. So if you need time to adjust those systems, do start early. Okay, so that once first gen kicks in, right, when you key in the wages and all that, the contribution rate reflected will be correct. Okay, so for more information on the new contribution rate from first gen, do go to our website on the link here. Okay. Now, the third factor that will affect the amount of CPF contribution will be the total wages of employee. Okay. So do take note that so long as your employee total wages for a calendar month exceed $50, okay, CPF contributions are entitled for that. Okay, but of course, there are three wage bands that will affect the amount of CPF contribution. So for those $50 to $500, CPF contribution will come from employer, and from 500 to 750, the employee will pay a small percentage of CPF contribution. And for those more than $750, it will be the full usual contribution rates. Okay. So the total wages for the employee, right? Now, just to take note that it is a requirement to submit accurate wage information of your employees. Okay, this is to ensure that whatever government schemes or entitlements that are given to especially the lower wage workers, right, they will be paid out accordingly. This will be very important for low wage workers because they may get extra like subsidies, entitlements, or funds from the government. So do make sure that the wage information is submitted correctly for employees. Now, when we talk about total wages, right, it's actually your ordinary wages plus your additional wages, which for short we call it OW and AW. Okay, so like some of you may like a bit confused over what's OW and AW. Okay, now for OW, right, is basically your wages that are paid on a regular basis, like on a monthly basis. For example, your monthly salary, your food allowances, even commissions that are paid on monthly basis, right? Those are considered as your OW. Okay, so OW, there is a ceiling which is $6,000 per month, which means that the CPF contributions is up to $6,000 per month for OW. So for example, if let's say you have a staff that employee that earns like $6,500 per month, right? The CPF contributions for OW will only be calculated up to $6,000 only. Okay, that's for OW. Then for AW, additional wages, are those that are paid on an irregular basis. So for those are, for example, like your annual bonuses, your AWS, things like that. These, like for example, are paid at the end of the year, once at the end of the year. Okay, so for similarly, there's also AW ceiling. Okay, so AW ceiling is $102,000 minus off your total OW subject to CPF for the year. Okay, so do take note of the ceiling cap and the kind of category these two OW and AW falls under. Okay. So here are some examples, okay, of let's say you need to submit when you submit your salary, the OW and AW for your employees on the system. Okay, so like for example, in this scenario, right? Okay, the OW for the staff is $3,000 per month. Okay, and they get AW of $2,000. Okay, so in the CPF system, CPF Easy Pay, right? You just indicate as per normal, 3,000 and $2,000, and the CPF contributions amount will be automatically computed. Okay, then for scenario 2, okay, you have an employee that the wages exceed OW, which is $9,000, excess of $3,000. Okay, and then you also calculated that the AW is $100,000. Okay, so when you submit the wages amount in the CPF Easy Pay, right? You don't have to indicate, like for example, $6,000 just because there's a ceiling. Okay, you should just indicate as per normal the full wages without applying the ceiling, and the CPF contribution rate amount should be automatically calculated. But of course, do check again and adjust manually if necessary. Okay. Then in the another example is, for example, some of y'all will let us know that, oh, I actually don't pay my staff once a month. Maybe for some reason you split the payment into, let's say, twice a month. Okay, so for example, in this scenario, right, these staff get $3,000 in total a month, but you pay them twice a month, which means each time you pay 1,500, 1,500. Okay, so when you make the CPF, submit the CPF contribution on a CPF Easy Pay, right? Do take note that you will have to indicate, okay, each time, right, what is the total amount of wages in a month. So in this case, is $3,000, okay? But you will need to take note to manually adjust the CPF amount accordingly. So for example, if let's say you pay your employee the first round of 1,500, right? Then you need to indicate the CPF contribution amount based on 1,500 in the system. Okay. Now another common question that we receive is that backdated salary increments like OW or AW. Okay, so what do we mean by backdated salary increments? So for example, right, you decided to give your staff increment, okay, but you thought, okay, maybe I should give maybe I decide now, but I backdate it for the earlier months. Okay, so if this is the case where, let's say you decide now and then you apply it for earlier months, right, the backdated amount is considered as AW. Okay, but if let's say the salary increment is paid late due to employer's mistake, so for example, you forgot to put it inside the system, right? When you submit, you forgot to include it inside your submission, right? It will be considered as OW, and there will be late payment interest. Okay, so yeah, so just to give you some scenario, okay. So for example, like you decided like in April, right, you wanted to give this staff salary increment, but maybe for example, you want to reward the staff even further, so you decided that, okay, I will backdate it. That means for he or she salary increment will actually start from February onwards. Okay, so in this case, right, the salary increment for February and March, right, will be considered as AW during your April submission. Okay. Then in another scenario is, okay, the salary increment actually started, you decided and started in February, okay, but maybe for some reasons you forgot to, adjust accordingly, so that you realize that, so you didn't actually, pay the CPF contribution according to the adjusted salary for February and March. Okay, so you realize the mistake in April, and then you will need to pay the CPF shortfall for February and March. Okay, so in this case, right, the payment of the CPF shortfall for February and March, right, will be considered for OW, and then there will be late payment interest incurred because this is considered as a mistake that you made. Okay. So you may be thinking that oh, this is a little bit complicated. Like how do I actually calculate the ceiling and all that? Okay. You can actually we have a tool on our CPF website called the additional wage ceiling calculator. Okay. So do check out, scan the QR code, check out the link, okay, and use this calculator to calculate the AW ceiling. Okay. So perhaps before you make submissions online, right? I'll encourage you to use the calculator, okay, so that you know that what is the ceiling, what is the AW ceiling, and then you can make the CPF contribution more accurately. Okay. So just now I also briefly again mentioned that there are some cases where you pay your employees on, like say, not once a month, like maybe once or twice, or you portion their wages. Okay, so do take note that CPF contributions are based on calendar month. Okay, so if let's say you are not paying, let's say at the end, the last day of the month, okay, you must remember to adjust your CPF contribution according to the calendar month. Okay? So for example, in this scenario, right, okay, the wages are, let's say for example, paid weekly. Okay, so CPF contribution for January 2021 must be calculated accordingly. Okay, so if let's say you paid your staff on 1st January, right? Okay, and then so the CPF contribution for 27th to 31st December shouldn't be included in your January CPF contribution. Okay, then if let's say you pay your staff on the 6th February of 2021, okay, similarly, the CPF contribution for 31st will only be for January will be only up to 31st Jan. Okay, anything that falls from 1st to 6th should be for the next month's contribution. Okay. So other payments, okay, that in addition to the CPF contribution, right, there are also other payments. Okay. Now for the employer side, okay, there is the skills development levy, which is your SDL. Okay. So do take note that SDL is applicable for all employees, including your foreign employees. Okay, so skills development levy, we are actually collecting on behalf of Skills Future Singapore. Okay, and it's a levy rate of 0.25% per employee. Okay, so do take note that for employers, you will need to make payment for all employees, including foreign employees. Okay, now for the employee side, in addition to the CPF contribution, right, that is deducted from your salary, they are also required to contribute to self-help groups, funds, and share donation. For self-help group funds, right, it's actually according to their race. So for example, I'm Chinese, so I will actually need to pay contribution to CDAC. Okay, and then of course for the other races, they have their own self-help group. Okay, now if let's say, so some people ask, what if my employees don't want to pay to self-help group? Okay, so it's an opt-out option. Okay, if let's say they do not want to contribute to the self-help groups, right? Your employees are actually supposed to go to the self-help group and go through the opt-out process directly to the self-help group. So I think they will need to probably submit a form and let the self-help group know that they are opting out of contribution. Okay, so your employees is supposed to do that, and once they obtain the letter saying that they are not going to contribute to self-help group, they should let you know, so that when you are making the CPF contribution, right, you won't deduct out of their from their pay as well. Okay, then another common question we receive is what happens if let's say your staff is an Indian Muslim. Okay, now for Indian Muslim, right, they will need to contribute to the two self-help groups, which is under MBMF and SINDA. Then if let's say they say, oh, I just want to contribute to one. Similarly, if let's say they only want to contribute to, say for example, MBMF, right, they will have to write into SINDA to say that they want to opt out of the CPF contribution. Okay, So yeah, so for more information on like contribution to self-help group and share donation, right, do check out our CPF website. You can scan the QR code here. Okay. Okay. So yeah, so just now I shared that, you know, mistakes are actually pretty common. We do receive like, you know, inquiries and submissions from like staff, employers that they actually make some mistakes. But of course, while it's common, do try to avoid making mistakes because once you make a mistake, right, you will have to go through a process of coming to us, submitting like you know, claims and refunds, and there will be some processes to go through because we will need to verify that whether these mistakes are genuine and things like that, and then before we can rectify the mistakes. Okay, so hopefully by going through some of the common mistakes, you are more aware, so that when you make your CPF contributions, right, then you will be able to avoid them. Okay. So some of the common mistakes in CPF contribution is computation and payroll system error. Okay, so if let's say you are using CPF Easy Pay, that this actually will be minimized because everything is auto computed. But let's say, you know, for some, probably a minority of y'all still go through the manual calculation, like using our Google calculator to calculate, let's say, what is 37% of your wage, and then, you know, but maybe along the way you calculated wrong. Okay. Or for some cases is the HR department uses a payroll system, right? And there might be some technical glitches, like your payroll system may have some technical glitches, and then end up, you know, the computation came out wrong. Okay. And then another common mistake is a delayed notification of employee status. So sometimes this could happen, like maybe a staff left, resigned, or go on no pay leave, and maybe for as a HR officer yourself, you will not, for some reason you are not notified, you are not updated. So maybe you already like submit it the CPF contribution. Then after that you were told that, oh, the staff, you know, resigned, left. Then that's when you make a mistake because you probably, yeah, you submitted wrongly lah because the staff already left. Okay. Then also quite a common mistake is wrong or duplicate payments. For example, you thought that you already you haven't submit, then you submit again. Then after you submit, you realize, actually I already submitted already. So you submitted twice accidentally. Another common mistake is using wrong CPF contribution rate. Like, so for example, just now I mentioned, once the staff turns 55, the rates will change. Probably you forgot about it, like, you know, then you still give give the usual rates when the rate should be reduced. And also for SPR employees, the first year rate is actually is lower, and you probably gave the wrong rates to the first year PR employees. Okay. Of course, another common mistake is wrong declaration of wages. For example, for maybe for certain wages that is considered under OW, you probably classify them under AW. Okay, so this may happen as well. Okay. So that is common mistakes during submission. Okay. There are also common mistakes for non-payment. That means for some reasons, you did not submit CPF contributions for the following reasons. Okay. So, like for example, let's say for employees on probation or temporary working arrangements, right? By right, they should be entitled to CPF contribution as well. But maybe you thought that, oh, maybe they are not supposed to, but actually they are supposed to. Okay. Then another quite common mistake is, which is actually a very serious offense, is that you actually agreed with an employee to not contribute CPF for higher take-home pay. Okay, so we'd like to emphasize that this is actually very serious, and under no circumstances should you have this agreement with an employee. Okay, so if let's say you go to like, oh, it could be that the employee come and request and say that, hey boss, I want to take a higher take-home pay, okay, so can I reduce my CPF contribution? So probably on the employer side, you thought that, oh, this is good for me, I can save. But actually it will be a losing end on your side, because at the end of the day, if let's say the employee came back and decided to want back their usual CPF contribution rate, CPF contribution amount, right? You are still obliged to make good the payment. Okay, so even though let's say yes, it's a mutual agreement, but if let's say at the end of the agreement the staff wants back the CPF contribution, you as an employer, you are still obliged to pay back the CPF contribution, and you also will incur late interest payment. Okay, so this is actually a losing end for employers should you fall into this agreement. So don't ever um, have this agreement with your employer. Okay. Then another common mistakes for non-payment is you probably you hired staff, okay, as employees, but you consider them as freelancers. Okay. So if let's say you hire freelancers, right? Do take note of the contract terms. Okay. So make sure to check through your contract terms. If you're unsure, do always check with MOM, okay, to see whether the freelancers are considered a contract of service or contract for service, so that you don't fall making the mistake of not paying them CPF contribution. Okay. And then, like just now I mentioned, there might be a wrong classification of wage payments, right? So let's say you wrongly classify AWOW, end up not paying the correct contribution. And then, yeah, and make up pay for NSMED. So just now I mentioned, so long as for NSMED, even though let's say they are not physically in office, let's say they are on their NS leave, they are still eligible for CPF contribution. Okay. So yes, if let's say there is any shortfall in CPF contribution, you are required to make up for the shortfall. Okay. So what happens if let's say you make too much, you make a mistake, end up you make too much CPF contribution, and you need to go for ask for refund from us. Okay, so I will show you some scenarios whereby you can actually claim refund from us. Okay, so if let's say you realize a mistake, you end up overpaying, you want to apply for refund, right? You can go to our online application service, okay, and apply for refund from us. Okay, so when can you get refund? Okay, so you can get refund, let's say if let's say your CPF contribution is paid in error. So for example, and a common mistake as mentioned is the age. Like when the staff turns 55, the contribution rate is 26% instead of 37%. So when you turn 55, you still pay 37%. Of course, it's paying too much. Okay, so you can actually apply to us to say that, oh, you overlooked, you paid too much, and you can ask for refund. Okay, and then of course, like just I mentioned, if let's say the staff already left the company and you still submit the CPF contribution for them, so you can get it back. Okay, so do take note that application for refund must be submitted within a year from the date of CPF contribution. Okay. Another scenario where you can actually apply for refund is when the mistakes made for CPF contribution paid on conditional wages repayable. Okay, so conditional wages are example wages that are paid when they fulfill a certain condition. So like for example, you have this staff that maybe once they complete their first year of service, right, they will probably get a bonus. Okay, but in order to get a bonus, maybe you need them to work another extra 1 more month. Okay, but before they work for that extra 1 more month, maybe they left already. Okay, so in this case, actually by right, the staff won't be entitled to the bonus, but you already made the payment to them. Okay, if that's the case, then yes, you can write into us, apply for refund so that we will refund you the extra contribution made. Okay, so another scenario example is let's say you paid CPF contribution on paid annual leave, like encashment of leave that is not taken. Okay, but actually they are later converted to no pay leave. Okay, so again, this is you pick excess CPF contribution, then you can actually ask for a refund from us. Another scenario where you can apply for a refund is, let's say you paid in excess of the AW ceiling or the CPF annual limit. Okay, so while maybe at the end of the year, right, when you calculate the AW, then after that you realize that, actually, I already provide the paid the contributions on employees AW, which is above the AW ceiling. Okay, so end up you paying more CPF contribution. Okay, or let's say because we every of us have have a CPF annual limit, right? So if exceed the contribution for the annual limit is also overpayment, okay, then you can seek for a refund from us. So um so the last area that we'll go through is supporting through COVID-19. I mean, of course, all of us, we know that we are still in the midst of pandemic, and it's a quite challenging period for all of us. Of course, the government has put in place some schemes and support for employers during this difficult period. Okay, so I'll go through some of the common FAQs that we receive for employers regarding support during the COVID-19 pandemic. Okay. So one common FAQ we receive is that is CPF payable on special payments given due to COVID-19? Okay, so I think for all of us, we did receive some cash payment from the government, okay, during COVID-19. Okay, so I mean, of course, when the cash payment is given to us directly, those are not entitled to CPF contribution. But if let's say if you feel that, oh, I have this extra cash, I decided to give it to my employees, right? Then yes, it will be considered, they will be entitled to CPF contribution because it increases their wages. Okay, so do take note of that. Okay, but if let's say you are giving reimbursements to employees for working in different location, like for example, maybe due to COVID, right, they can't go back to their own office, and you are giving them reimbursement or for, let's say, for transport, for meal, lodging, or utility, right? Okay, then they are also not required. Okay, but do take note that the reimbursements are entitled based on their continued attendance and employment and work in Singapore, okay, of which the expenses should be incurred due to the COVID-19 lockdown, work from home, etc. Okay. Okay. Yeah. So just now I mentioned about the cash payout, right? Yeah. So if let's say the from government to employees, the cash payout, right, is not entitled. Okay. But if let's say you decide to give your allowance, the cash payout to your staff as allowances, then yes, CPF contribution is required. Okay. So another common question that we receive is that what happens if I'm unable to pay CPF contribution on time? Okay, so our due date for CPF contribution remain unchanged. It is still the last day of the calendar month. Okay, but if let's say you are facing difficulties, do keep a lookout, be updated on the support measures announced by the government and at Singapore budget. And if you are facing any like cash flow issue or anything, you can also drop in, check in with us and see what kind of support are there out there to support you during this difficult period. Okay. Another common question that we receive is that is CPF payable, okay, for overseas employees who are working remotely in Singapore? So I think travel, there are a lot of travel restrictions right now. So some of your staff, right, maybe they are originally supposed to work in overseas. They are actually based in overseas, but because they are not able to, probably go back to that country or for some reason, they have to work remotely in Singapore. Okay, so for those staff that are because because of this condition up to 30th Jan 2021, right? they are not required to make CPF contribution provided there is no change in contractual terms, okay, and it's a temporary working arrangement, okay. And if let's say they are able to leave Singapore, they are able to leave Singapore as soon as possible, up to 30th June. Okay, but do take note that starting from 1st July onwards, okay, even if let's say your staff that is who is originally supposed to base in overseas are now working remotely in Singapore, right? They are entitled to CPF contribution starting from 1st July 2021 onwards. Okay. So another question that we receive is how about COVID? Let's say your staff needs to go for a COVID-19 test and they seek reimbursement from you. Okay. So CPF contribution is not required, okay, if let's say the test, okay, is required by the authorities or medical practitioners, like for example, like let's say it's a suspected case, or then they go for the test. And of course, if let's say the test is done because of work, like they have to travel for work and they have to take the test, okay, so CPF contributions are not required for these two conditions. But if let's say they are doing the test due to personal reasons, like for example, a few months back we have some festive periods like Chinese New Year, Hari Raya, and then they decided to come back, for personal reasons to spend time with their family, and they have to do their test, right? So if let's say they decide to reimburse from you, then CPF contribution is required. Okay. And is CPF payable for overseas employees, okay, working during the stay-home notice period in Singapore? So currently, like, let's say you have employees coming back from overseas country and they will have to go for a 2-week stay-home notice in Singapore. So if let's say they are returning to Singapore for personal reasons, okay, and during this stay-home period, right, they are just working remotely, right? CPF contribution is not required because it is a temporary work arrangement due to the restrictions. Okay. Okay. Okay, so I've spoken a lot. So let's take a short break here while we watch a video.
Dear, do you think it's time for us to get our own place? I heard there's a new BTO coming up, and it's really near your parents' home.
I've heard about it as well. How much is it?
It's about 350k. It's a really good price for such a good place. And I think our CPFs can cover fully for the loan.
Dear, it's good that we can finally get our own home. Shall we go and work on the sums?
Here's your tea.
I don't think I have enough money in my CPF account to pay for the monthly installments. I have to use cash to pay for it instead.
So weird. Shouldn't you have more money in your CPF account since you worked so much OT for the past few months?
Yeah, I know. Maybe because I work so much OT, so there's no CPF contribution.
No, that shouldn't be the case. Your boss should still be contributing to your CPF for your OT pay. You see here?
If that's the case, I should talk to him tomorrow about this. Hey, boss.
Hey,
Can I have a short chat with you?
yeah, sure. Come, have a seat. Yeah, so what is it about?
Yeah, it's like this. I've just checked my CPF account and I wasn't paid CPF for my OT duties.
Yes, that's true. But that's because your OT duties are not liable for CPF. But I did pay your CPF for your basic salary.
I don't think that's the case because even OT duties are liable for CPF contributions.
Is it? Well, I'll tell you what, let me do the necessary checks, and then when it all tallies up, I'll make the payment to you. Is that okay with you?
Thanks, boss.
Yeah, sorry for the trouble. Hey, Kenny.
Yes, boss?
Just wanted to let you know that you're right. I don't need to pay CPF contributions for your OT duties. I will do so immediately, and sorry for the oversight.
Thanks, boss. Well, it's better late than never, right?
True. How's your wife doing?
Look, dear, that's our flat in 3 years' time. It's gonna be so beautiful.
Yes, Mrs. Tom. This is what we have been working so hard for.
Okay, we are back. Okay, so yeah, so after watching this video, I hope it's actually a reminder to you that CPF contribution is actually very important for everyone of us, Singaporeans and PR, because we do use CPF contribution for our housing, healthcare, and retirement needs. So do take note that as employers, you have the responsibility to make sure that you make CPF contribution promptly and accurately for your staff. Okay. Okay, so yes, I did a lot of sharing already. I hope you are able to learn quite a lot of things today. So let me just do a very quick and short quiz to test your knowledge. Okay, so I will launch a poll question. Just give me a moment, yeah. Sorry. Okay. Okay, so we have this question. Okay, John is an N-level student working for you during the school term. Okay, earning $700 a month. You are required to pay CPF for him, true or false? Okay, so just now this one I covered a little bit already. Like for students that are working for you during school term, right? Are they entitled to CPF contribution or not? Okay. So okay, very good. We have quite a lot of numbers, a lot of participants answering. Okay, let's see. Okay, so I'll end poll in 3, 2, and 1. Okay, let's see. All right. Okay, so the answer. Okay, I think very good. Majority of y'all got it correct. About 85% of y'all got it correct. Okay. So yeah, so the answer here is true. Okay, so for students working for you during school term, right, you are supposed to pay CPF contribution for them. So like just now I mentioned, right, during school term, their priority should be studying, not working. So if let's say they are working and studying at the same time, in some sense, it's like, CPF contribution is additional for them. Okay, so it's only when let's say they are not studying, then CPF contribution is not required. All right. Okay, so let's go on to the second question. Okay, second question. Okay, employee sign a contract with you stating that you do not need to contribute CPF for higher take-home pay. Okay, so after his contract is terminated, okay, he came to you, he complained that, hey, you didn't give me my CPF contribution. I'm supposed to get this amount, but you underpaid me for the previous months. Okay, you as the employer have to make good the underpayment. Is it true or false? Okay. So just now, this one I also covered during the session whether are you supposed to make good the underpayment or not. Okay. So we'll end this poll in 3, 2, and 1. Okay. So again, 85% of y'all got it correct. Okay. So yes, so just now I mentioned, right, this is actually something that is very, very serious and you shouldn't, so as I mentioned, even if let's say it's a mutual agreement, let's say you can say that, oh, my staff agreed what? Like he or she said that I want to take home a higher pay, you just pay me lesser CPF contribution. He has no right to, come back and ask for more CPF contribution. That is not right. Okay, you as the employee, even though let's say they agreed to and decided to come back, you have to make good the payment. If not, they can actually complain to us and we'll start investigation and things like that. And you yourself, you not only have to make the back payment, you also have to pay the late payment interest. Okay. Okay, so let's go on to the last question. Okay. So last question is, okay, so we have this employee that went for NS training. Okay, a male employee went for NS training in July. Okay, you as an employer does not have to contribute CPF for him since he's not around at work. Okay, so is it true or false? Okay, so my staff is not around. Should I, he's away in NS, should I still pay CPF contribution to him? Okay, so let's end this poll in 3, 2, and 1. Okay, so majority of y'all got it correct. Okay, the answer is false. Okay, so yes, even though your male employee is away from NS, not at work, you are still, it's an entitlement. Yeah, and still entitled to CPF contribution because they're serving a nation. We shouldn't penalize them for serving the nation. Okay. Okay, so we have come to the end of our quiz. Okay, so before I end the session, right, just to share with you all some useful resources that you can check out. Okay. So yeah, so do check out. We do have a very comprehensive employer guides on our website. Okay, so just to go to cpf.gov.sg/employer. Okay, so there are a lot of resources, a lot of FAQs for you to go through. So some of the commercial questions that you have regarding making a CPF contribution or any, like, let's say you want to rectify mistakes, things like that, is all up there. Okay, so if let's say you have any questions, right, do check out the resources because you may be able to find answers there. Okay. Then another website that you can check out is the government paid leave scheme. So like just now, for example, I mentioned, like, if your staff go on NS pay, you can get reimbursement back from, let's say, MINDEF, right? This is also under this government paid leave. Okay, so just go to this website and check out. There's also calculators for you to calculate the CPF contribution, things like that. And then, okay, of course, we do have quite a few, CPF do have a few social media platforms. So we are on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, and our latest channel is Telegram. So of course, if let's say you are on Telegram, you know that you can subscribe to Telegram and then can get bite-sized CPF tips on your phone. And of course, you can download the My CPF mobile app, okay, to keep track of your CPF savings. And just now, like I mentioned, if you wish to listen to our podcasts, you can check out Spotify, Apple Podcasts, etc.